This is Unprepared, a Novus Global podcast. You can't always prepare for what the game throws at you, but you can prepare for who you're going to be. Welcome to the show.
Today we're interviewing Pat Chambers, who led Penn State men's basketball to a 26-win season and was poised for an NCAA tournament appearance before the pandemic in 2020. But because of a statement taken out of context, Pat was forced to resign without inquiry or investigation.
Who is Pat Chambers, Joe?
Pat Chambers, former head coach of Boston as well as Penn State University. And currently, where are you head coach of, Pat, again? Fill in the world.
FGCU, baby.
FGCU. Nike school, and we're going to work on getting me a pair of Nikes, right? That's a whole nother story. I've been working that.
That angle?
There's always an angle.
Always hustling.
But for me, it's a pleasure to have Pat on.
Yeah.
Pat and I did some great work that we're going to talk a little bit about here today. There was a little middle ground, we'd say, that Pat was in, trying to figure out, do I want to continue to pursue coaching? And here he is. You kind of know the end of the story. So I want to get into that. So let's kind of start from the beginning. Pat, like, what was it about basketball that made you say, I want to be a part of this sport? Like, I want to devote a big portion of my life to this specific sport.
First of all, thanks for having me, guys. And it's been an amazing and beautiful journey to get to this point. And I can't thank you guys enough. I'm incredibly grateful. For me, I was the youngest of 12, 9 boys, 3 girls.
Holy cow.
Wow.
Wait a sec.
He just glosses
Pause
over
on that. Pause on that.
That's normal. That's a normal thing.
From a big family, it was you better do something. You better do something to get out of the house.
Yeah.
And no, my brothers and my parents, my sisters, it was so much fun. We played all sports, and I kind of migrated to basketball. I loved football. Don't get me wrong. I loved football. I loved basketball. And it was a joy, but my heart was with basketball, and I'll tell you why, because of the executive coaching piece. I had, and I tie it in with the executive coaching, I had great coaches. So when I was a youngster in grade school or elementary school, I had a phenomenal coach who he planted the seed, the love of basketball. And my brothers gave me the competitiveness, the fire. But this man, Tom Rare, was just phenomenal in grade school. And then it just led to high school, where I had another phenomenal coach in Dan Doherty, who was the trivia question: who was the head coach between Bob Knight and Coach K at West Point? It's Dan Doherty.
I think, yeah.
You're cheating. That's cheating, Pat.
No, you're on it, man.
Yeah, I was right on top of that one.
Yeah, of course.
Right on top of that one.
And then I go to college as a player, and I played for a Hall of Fame coach. He's in Springfield, Mass. And Herb McGee, and then, you know, if the sparks weren't inflamed enough, it's absolutely an inferno inside me for the game. Then I get to coach with Jay Wright. So, you know, I go with my teacher, my family, my teachers, and then you know, as we progress, you just love being a part of a team. You love being a part of the locker room, the plane rides, the bus rides. That, to me, was everything. That shaped you as a team, and it shaped all of us as men. And I can tell you this right now, my best friends in the world are from the teams that I played on. And it's no coincidence. You know, I'd like to say I'm somewhat successful. They're all successful, too. You know, that old cliche, like, you know, how successful you want to be? Well, look at your friends. Well, guess what? Family, coaching, my teammates, the game has been so good to me. I'm so grateful. So that's how I fell in love with the game of basketball.
Yeah. And I mean, the theme that we want to jump into is this idea of preparation, right? Like, you know, we cannot always prepare for what the game throws at us or for what life throws at us, but we can prepare for who we're going to be. And that's what we really want to start to talk about. So you were preparing for a significant chunk of your life to be a head coach. Like, what was instrumental in that preparation process?
Yeah, I mean, I was a sponge. You know, again, I was blessed to have older brothers to look up to and these great coaches. And my mother used to say to me all the time, fail to prepare, prepare to fail. So I was always searching for, that routine of greatness, or, being ahead of, I'm going to get myself ready. Kind of like we did these past 9 or 10 months, prepare myself for the next chance. So when I was younger, I didn't start right away on the basketball team, but I prepared to start. And that's lifting and conditioning and staying in shape. And Joe, as you know, we're getting shots up. Getting shots up. And then as you start your coaching career, I kept a binder. I was preparing to be a head coach. And, you have scouts. I kept a binder of all my scouts, of all the sets that these teams run and these coaches would run. And I was preparing for the day to be a head coach. And I felt like that preparation really catapulted me quickly to being a coach in the Big Ten. Was I ready for it? I don't know, but I was prepared for it. And I think because of, again, family, coaches, players, people I've been around, my preparation set me up to be in this profession. And again, we got to go back to Mom. And Mom set us up with some great words of wisdom to make sure that we were always prepared and we were always ready. Don't get ready, be ready.
Stay ready. Well, and that's the thing. So you spend so much time preparing for a position, preparing for a certain opportunity, preparing for a role, and then that position is taken from you, right? So you have so much joy for the game, so much joy in being a head coach, and then before you know it, that's gone. And you can share a little bit about what happened there, and how did you deal with, wow, this thing that I prepared for so long is now, it's gone.
I'm going to share something. I think, Joe, you might know this, but the rest of the group may not. First of all, you always think that you're ready, right? Especially when you're a leader and you're in that role as head coach. You're always preparing for if this ever happens, and you and your wife are always preparing if this goes this way. In the beginning at Penn State, I didn't have ton of success. So you're always kind of on your toes a little bit, just going, let's have a nest egg. Let's be ready. Yep. This is what we're going to do if this does happen. So when I was, I'll tell you a quick story. When I was 31, I got stabbed and in the neck, and you can't see it on the FaceTime, but I had a scar from the back of my ear all the way to my aorta, just about a centimeter short of my aorta. And, I thought physically, like, wow, this is why, God, why me? And, you go through that why, and I'm sure I did that. I'm positive I did that when I got let go at Penn State as well. And I tell that story because, a year after I got stabbed, I finally started to go, okay, I think I know the playbook of adversity and challenge. And I think I know how to get out of this. And I think I have the routine. And so anyway, I had that in my back pocket. That's why I share that story with you. So now I get let go, and I think, well, I have the playbook, right? I have it. I got it. This is more mental, and the stabbing's more physical. And what did I do then? You can't prepare for it. It didn't matter what happened when I was 31. Yeah. I mean, it helped a little bit, but in the end, I was confused. I was dazed. I was scared. I was angry. I was bitter. I didn't know where I was going to go, what the next move was. I have a wife. I have 4 children. My reputation was shot. They tried to destroy me. Every negative emotion you can possibly think of, I went through it after that day. Because you're like, all right, something's going on here. Something doesn't feel right. And this is at Penn State now. And then next thing you know, bam, it happens. And you felt like, all right, I had this armor of God on, but really they got through the armor, and they just took me to my knees. And full transparency, I was on my knees many a nights, in tears, going, I can't believe this happened to me. Because you're thinking, I'm a good guy. look what I've done for so many kids, and I've helped kids get their graduation and give them a different path at life and give them the experience of basketball and play in the Big Ten and go to Penn State and, et cetera. And then you're still just not as ready as you can possibly be. And so that's kind of what happened to me during that phase of you got fired. And then you're like this, and Joe, you and I have talked about this. You're labeled. Now people are judging you. And now you kind of like start to mind read. I wonder what they're saying about me when you're in mixed company or you're out there and about. And it was the greatest challenge of my life, to be in that situation and really uncertain of where I was going to go next, as a man, as a father, as a leader for a career, as a husband. Really dark, some real dark days. And again, I'm just so blessed I was able to come out of it.
So, I mean, I have many questions at this point. I think what's interesting is when you talk about preparation, we all think, in your role, you're preparing for a national title, right? In what we do, we're preparing to be the best. Mm-hmm. How do you prepare for what you are now facing in that moment, right? Where you don't know what the future looks like. How did, in a weird way, like how did you being a coach, being able to, coach these players through their difficulties? Was there a moment in time where you like looked in the mirror and you said, look, I've done this for other people. Now I need to do it for myself.
Practice what you preach. Some guys go through shooting slumps. Some guys have lost parents or loved ones. Some guys have broken relationships. Some guys, had a very tough family upbringing. And you have to help and shape them and guide them. And now you have to practice what you preach. So for me, it was hard to be able to look myself in the mirror. It was full of shame. I was embarrassed. And I and what did I really, in the end, I look back and go, what was I shameful about? I got crushed on social media. I got crushed on television networks and in newspapers. And, I was publicly flogged. But I know who I was. I know my foundation. I know my character. I know what my integrity was and my intent was all about. But it didn't matter. It didn't matter. So for me, you rely on your faith. If I had a playbook right now, it would be faith, number one. And I'm an incredibly faithful man. Daily mass, adoration, rosaries, confession, whole bit. My parents did a great job of raising me in a Catholic family. So that was number one. And then number two was listening to positive music, uplifting music. Number three was my wife, my kids. Maybe we should flip that 2 and 3.
I was going to say, Pat.
That's a good move.
Pat, you're not a country music fan, are you? No country music, right? Because that's the most depressing garbage I've ever. No, I'm just kidding.
I think love is incredibly powerful, right, guys? I mean, it's the most powerful thing that we have on this planet. So I think love was critical. So wife, children, my extended family, and friends, exercise, walking, it all mattered. And then I knew that I had to get out. I knew I couldn't hide. And if I kept hiding, I would never end up where I was. So that's when we all get together, Novus Global, and it really, I was in a kind of a gray area, like where am I going? What am I doing? Where am I headed? And we, thanks to you guys, we kind of cleared that up, got on the right track.
Because I was gonna say that gray area is where we started to do some of the work, and I remember using the analogy with you because you were very uncertain about whether or not there was a possibility for you to coach again. And I still remember that conversation very clearly where you were like, well, maybe I join you guys as a coach. And you also said maybe there's real estate. And when that came out of your mouth, I was like, oh yeah, he's bullshitting. I know definitely he does not want to be a real estate agent.
around on a Sunday afternoon.
Right, exactly. And I remember the skittishness that I kind of heard in your voice, and the analogy I used was, when a player gets hurt, you can see usually their first game back from the injury, they're very reluctant.
Hesitant.
They're very hesitant. They don't play at 100. They because they don't want to get hurt again.
Yeah.
And I remember when I communicated that to you, you were just like, yeah, that's basically where I'm at.
I remember that conversation very, very well. The indecision, the uncertainty, you're just trying to grab on something that makes sense because you want to provide. And, when I said it and you called me out on it, I needed that. At that time, I needed tough love. I needed direction. I needed someone. And again, I believe God put us together for a reason.
Yeah.
I was tied to 20. I was doing really well. And I was just about to, hopefully figure some things out. I just couldn't finish. I couldn't get into the end zone. And that conversation was like, I think you said, it was fear, definitely a ton of fear of being afraid, like you said about the injury. Like you're afraid to give it your all. You're afraid to go all out, and I was that. But it came down to, is it going to outweigh? If you go back or try to be a coach, is it going to outweigh the negatives, or will it outweigh what happened in the past? If you remember that, Joe.
And I think that's because to go back to what Matt was saying is, I think there comes a certain point for all of us where we cannot do the thing that we provide for others. For you as a coach, it was like, I can help other people in their time of need, and sometimes we don't have whatever it is to be the coach for ourselves.
Sure. Well, we use the analogy. I think there's 2 surgeons have done surgery on themselves, like one guy was in Antarctica. He had to take out his own appendix.
I love that you know this.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. One guy was in Antarctica. He was a Russian surgeon, and he took his own appendix out. And, they asked him afterwards, like, what was that like? He's like, don't ever do it. Like, it's like, there's this need to, like, we need each other. We need others, especially in a conversation when we're dealing with thoughts in our head, because left alone, we just believe it. We just believe what we're saying to ourselves. And, Pat, I remember initially talking to you, and then Johan was talking to you, and I remember thinking, like, oh, this guy, he still wants to do what he did, but he believes it's impossible, so he's not even willing to admit that to himself. Or maybe that was the thought I had. I don't know if that's actually true. But then hearing about, and kind of the broader point, this whole idea of slowing down and asking for help or getting out of our heads in the conversation. Like, as a coach, you do that every day for your players. Like, I'm sure those are constant conversations with your players. But how often do we think, like, how often do I think I don't need it? Mm-hmm. Right? And it's an easy trap to fall into. Yeah.
You're 100% correct. And again, I know Joe knows this. I did not think I would ever coach again. Yeah. I thought it was dead end. I thought it was over. The destruction was done. Totally canceled. Didn't have any prayer of becoming a coach ever again. And as I was out before we got together, I convinced myself of it.
Wow.
So those times, right, when we're, the automatic thinking, the ants that run around in our head constantly, I had convinced myself that I had no shot at ever becoming a coach again because of society. I had brainwashed myself to thinking that. And fortunately, I got a couple breaks and we get together, and it's like that workbook that we use with Novus Global. It helped me change my beliefs. It helped me change my perspective and my mindset. And I'm telling you, if I didn't do that, I'm not sure I might be in real estate right now.
Well, Pat, were there people when you started back onto the dream that you had once realized and then wanted to realize again, when you started pursuing coaching again, were there people who thought you were nuts? Like, were there people in your family, or like people were like, are you serious? Like, you're canceled. Like, that means you can't resurrect. You can't come back from the dead. Like, was there any of that going on when you decided to jump back in?
It's such a good question. And there was more than, I'll say, anywhere from 6 to 8 people that said you're done. Search firm people, agents.
Wow.
Basically said you're dead. Don't even try it. Don't even go back. You're gone. You're a goner.
Huh.
And they weren't real kind about it either. They were almost like, dude, you're done. I mean, I don't even know why we're saying that. That was piercing, for sure.
Yeah.
And again, it's so defeating when you know who you are and somebody's saying that to you, and it's crushing. So
I have a question, Pat. I'm in the world of sport, obviously. I represent baseball players. And one of the things, as doing a little bit of research on you, that I admired so much was when you stepped down from Penn State, you said, quote, "I'm taking a step back to prepare myself for the next 20 years. And what was so interesting for me to read, again, being in this world, when something like that happens, and I'm not drawing parallels to what you went through to anybody else who dealt with being canceled, but when something like that happens, I think everybody's initial reaction is like, okay, how do I make this as clean as possible? How can this not be messy and lead me down a more difficult road? And it was like immediately, not that you were taking accountability, but you said, look, I need to do some self-reflection. I need to take some time and figure out what I need to be doing. And then when you then get the job with Gulf Coast, you say, you get introduced and you said, you spent the past 18 months continuing to grow and educate and self-reflect. In this world that we're all in, no one ever takes accountability. And just those two quotes, while they sound a little, simple and not hard to understand, you immediately just in those two sentences basically said, look, I had to do the hard work, right? And I wonder do you feel like you almost had to convince yourself when you stepped down that coaching isn't on the table so that you almost allowed yourself to truly dive into doing the most difficult work of your career, right? If you would have known coaching was potentially on the table down the road, would you have gone down a different path of like, all right, let me just make this look as easy as possible so that I can get myself to another position? Instead of, I'm taking coaching out of this, I'm going to do some self-reflection. And if it's right for me, if it's in my story, I'm going to take advantage of it down the road. But I can't even think about that right now. There was a question in there somewhere, but I don't
I'm curious, Pat, as this journey, being someone at the highest levels of college, collegiate sport, and continuing that journey on, like, what are your thoughts on how sport needs to evolve or the culture of sport needs to change? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? It's either is great. Like, I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack. I just wish people just know that there are good people, there are good coaches. I believe we all have the right intent. Would you agree with that? I think we all have the right intent. We all want to get our players better. We all want to get our staff better. We all want to grow. We all want to learn from our mistakes. It just seems like you make a mistake and now you're done. You're done. There's no coming back from making a mistake. And look, everybody's made mistakes in their lifetime. And can we learn? Can we grow? Can we teach? Can we educate? Can we get better? I'm not saying give somebody a free pass if they do something egregious. I'm just saying, like.
And I'm wondering, Pat, like, because you're speaking to something that I've thought a lot about. It's like a lot of athletes torment themselves because they need to be perfect. Like, I need to be perfect. They think they need to be perfect. I need to be perfect. I need to execute with perfection. And that, like, it's almost like the culture is having that conversation. Like, you need to be perfect. If you're not perfect, you're out.
Right.
Versus, no, what if failure is a part of growth and we're more addicted to growth than we are perfection? Like, that's the thing running through my head.
It's such a flawed. That's the thing, is there's no athlete on earth that has a spotless record. Like, professionally,
I don't know if you've seen mine. It's
well, everybody takes L's, right? And that's the thing is, if you're an athlete, the way that you take L's really matters.
Yeah.
So what type of internal work do you do to show up for the L in a professional way, in a humble way, an empowered way, in a way that changes everything for the next game so that you can get the W?
And do we give people an opportunity to play the next game, right? Like you, Pat, have the opportunity. You're in the next game, even though you believed at one point there's no other game. Like I'm not allowed to play anymore, which isn't true. And I think that's an interesting, like, highlighted point that hasn't been true here.
No, look, we're in an interesting place in society, though, because I think at the highest level, these athletes are gonna fail to get to the top.
Yeah.
And if we as people don't have grace for the failure, like, at some point these players are gonna burn out, right? Suicide rates will go up. Like, not to get morbid, but I mean the stresses.
And even more so, not just grace for failure. Sorry, Pat. Not just grace for failure, but failure is a part of the growth.
Right.
It's not like we got to put up with it.
It's
like,
a part of the game.
It's a part of the game. Pat, what did you want to say?
It's absolute. Look, I'll take it from a few. Let me give you a few perspectives here. One, I teach my kids, I don't want you to be perfect. I just make good choices. You know right from wrong. I don't want you to be perfect. You go on social media, everybody tries to be perfect. They show the perfect family, the perfect vacation, the perfect home, the perfect life, all the smiles. Like every Twitter, Instagram, whatever, everybody's perfect. Facebook, everybody's perfect, right? Everybody's so happy. And then I'll go one step further. Jay Wright, the best coach, maybe the face of college basketball. He's burned out. He's so burned out of trying to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
It's suffocating. It really is. It's suffocating. And how do we respond to this stuff?
Well, and one thing, Pat, and I'm sure Johan and you have talked about this, and Matt and we've talked about this too, but like one of the reasons we're having this conversation, the reason Joe and I do what we do, and why we're friends with Matt, and why we're connected to you, is this idea of creating that conversation in every corner of sport we can. Not only because, when you're in a game, the way you relate to being behind, ahead, all that stuff, like the transformation that's required for performance, but that's not just a tool that applies to performance on the court or on the ice or on the pitch. Like it applies to your life. And I just want to, Pat, like your story, and we'll have an intro and we'll explain like the story a little bit more, but to see you go from, and this is what, 9 months? It's not. Is it less?
Yeah. Well,
when we got together, it was about 9, right, Joe?
Right.
Like 9 months from, and that's not a lot of time to go
not.
from. I think I'm done. I think I'm gonna go sell houses and drive a car and drive people around and give up on something that you love. And it's just so fun to sit around this table and talk about the fact that you're still doing the thing that you loved. And actually, I would probably suggest better in ways that you didn't even realize you could be better as a result of going through something so challenging and difficult.
Yeah. Again, I go back to one of the mantras Joe and I put together, or he really gave to me, is the best is yet to come. And I felt like, I was like, you know what? It is the best yet to come. I felt like when I beat Michigan State at Michigan State, I thought that was pretty good.
That was the best, yeah.
When I beat Michigan at Michigan, I thought that was pretty good. And then I realized maybe there's just a different avenue to the vision or the goal that I have. This was a quick roadblock to teach me a few things about self-reflection, growth, and, figure it out a little bit more, or change your leadership style, get to know the kids a little bit better, a little history. But I feel like I do believe in my heart that the best is yet to come.
Yeah, and there's new challenges ahead. There's going to be all kinds of ups and downs. And Pat, I can say with confidence that there's something inside of you that will be ready for those moments. So I'm really grateful for you spending time with us today, being a part of our conversation. You're one of my favorite human beings on earth.
I appreciate you guys.
I want to know when this movie's coming out.
Yeah, I'm gonna write it.
First off,
I'm gonna write it.
He had a movie before he got to I got stabbed in the neck.
Right, exactly.
Like that's just one. There's a trilogy. That's what it is. There's a trilogy.
That's the appetizer to the meal, and I
that's Philly life.
Yeah,
that's Philly life. Whoa! People in Philly are like, yeah, that is. Yeah.
Unprepared is a Novus Global podcast, hosted by Matt Hannaford, Dan Leffelaar, and Johan Martinez-Khalilian. Our producer is Yvonne Lasarde. Sound engineering by Eugene DeFleu. Technical production by K.S. Chacon. Editing and mix by Yvonne Lasarde. You can't always prepare for what the game throws at you, but you can prepare for who you're going to be.